Members of the Joint Assembly will please rise to receive Her Excellency, the Governor, and her distinguished escort committee. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the Joint Assembly and honored guests, I'm proud to present to you the Honorable Nikki Haley, Governor of South Carolina.
Thank you very much for that wonderful welcome. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the General Assembly, constitutional officers, and my fellow South Carolinians. This and every year, we will continue the tradition that recognizes the certain truth that nothing said in this chamber tonight or done in this chamber tomorrow would be possible without the commitment and sacrifice of the men and women in uniform who bravely serve our state and nation. The hardest part of my job is the calls I make to the families of our fallen heroes. But each time I put down the phone, I am touched and amazed by the strength, the grace, and the pride with which these brave survivors handle their tremendous sacrifice of their loved one. So now please join me as we pay tribute to those who gave the last full measure of devotion in the service of their state and country this past year. Senior Airman Nicholas J. Alden. Sergeant First Class Alvin A. Boatwright. Staff Sergeant Thomas J. Dudley. Sergeant LaShawn D. Evans. Private First Class Kaylin C.L. Johnson. Sergeant First Class Jonathan Bryant McCain. Gunnery Sergeant Ralph Earl Pate, Jr. Private First Class Cesare Presley. Master Public Safety Officer Edward Scott Richardson. Sergeant Ryan D. Sharp. Chief Warrant Officer Terry L. Varnador II. Sergeant First Class Anthony Vinetz, Jr. Private First Class Justin M. Whitmire. we will never forget. We are a patriotic people, South Carolinians. We love our state and we love our country. And we love our men and women who put on the uniform, who keep us safe. They are our parents and our children, our husbands and our wives, our mothers, our fathers, our siblings, our friends. We are honored to have with us the parents of one of those heroes, Lance Corporal William Kyle Carpenter from Gilbert, who was wounded in Afghanistan and is continuing his recovery at Walter Reed. The prayers of South Carolina continue to be with Kyle and all of our wounded veterans. Mr. and Mrs. Jim Carpenter, thank you for being here. Please stand. Tonight, there are 766 families across the state with loved ones in the South Carolina Army and Air National Guard who are deployed and serving overseas far from their homes. Our family shares a special bond with the military families of South Carolina. Like them, we know the pride of watching our loved one wear the uniform of the strongest, proudest nation in the history of the world, loving his job. Please join me in welcoming my husband, an officer in the South Carolina Army National Guard, and the coolest first man ever, Michael Haley. I have often said, and I firmly believe, that if I'm a good wife and a good mother, I'll be a good governor. The greatest blessing of my life is being a mom to two little ones, a daughter who loves to dance and a son who wants to be the next LeBron. Please help me thank my two little ones who keep me humble every day and remind me that no matter whatever is happening in the world, the most important title I will always have is Mom. Rena and Nayland, stand up and give everybody a big wave. I have great love and great respect for our state motto, Dum Spiro Spero, meaning while I breathe, I hope. We adopted it in 1776, that fateful year that birthed the nation each of us is blessed to call home. It described South Carolinians then, tough, resilient, ever optimistic, and I believe it describes us now. The people we call our friends and neighbors, the people known around the world as South Carolinians, cherish our faith, our families, and the values they instill in us. We believe all is possible with hard work, and our great hope lies in creating a better tomorrow for our children and our children's children. Ladies and gentlemen, while I breathe, I hope, and it is with great faith in those words, the words chosen by our forefathers, that I say to you tonight that the state of our state is surging. When this administration came into office just over a year ago, with unemployment in double digits and growing, our focus was almost singular, jobs. The reason is fairly simple. If you give a person a job, you take care of a family. And we have a lot of families to take care of in South Carolina. The good news is we've made great progress this past year. The bad news is we still have a ways to go. But my pledge to each of you sitting before me tonight, and more importantly to the 4.6 million South Carolinians outside of these walls, is that I will not rest until we've created a climate in which every citizen of this state who wants a job has a job. We have grown and expanded our South Carolina family this year, welcoming in some wonderful new partners. And after all was said and done, due to the kind cooperation through all branches and all levels of government that can and should be spread beyond the economic development arena, we were able to celebrate $5 billion of investment in South Carolina and the recruitment of almost 20,000 new jobs in our great state. In a few moments, I'm going to recognize a number of those new partners who Michael and I have invited here tonight as our special guests. But before doing so, I want to focus a little on the cooperation mentioned earlier, on what it looks like and what it has meant for our state. We all remember the excitement that swept across South Carolina back in the fall of 2009 when Boeing chose North Charleston as the location to build a new line of 787 Dreamliners. We remember what 1,000 initial jobs meant to the people of our state, and we remember it is the lift to our economy and our spirits that we needed. We remember the promise of thousands of future aerospace jobs both inside and out of the Boeing plant, and what those jobs will do for the next generation of South Carolinians. It was the greatest economic development success the Palmetto State had celebrated in almost 2 decades, and the people of our state wrapped our arms around the newest member of the South Carolina family. Part of the reason for our enthusiasm was that Boeing knew no bounds. We had seen how they operated in Washington State. They took care of those that took care of them. While they were creating 1,000 jobs here, they were expanding 2,000 more in Washington State. Not a single Boeing worker was hurt by their decision. In fact, just the opposite. A commitment from Boeing to a state, to a community, to a workforce is a real commitment, a proven commitment, and we knew that the face of South Carolina would forever be changed. Then this spring, the National Labor Relations Board reared its head, suing Boeing in what will surely be remembered as one of the most fundamentally un-American decisions ever handed down by the federal government. And South Carolina would not stand for it. From every corner of our state, we pushed back. Our federal delegation, business leaders, state and local officials, and most importantly, the citizens of South Carolina. And Boeing stood tall, under tremendous pressure from the president and his union allies. This great American company said, no, we did nothing wrong, and we refused to cave. And late last year, the NLRB backed down and dropped its frivolous lawsuit. Please take a moment to join me in expressing our gratitude to a great American, and yes, a great South Carolinian, as he now has a home in the Lowcountry, Judge Michael Ludig, Executive Vice President and General Counsel for the Boeing Company, and a tremendous friend to the state of South Carolina. I run through this story that many of us already know because there are a number of important lessons that lie within. First is the lesson I want to make clear to the business community, both in and out of our state. When you're here, you're family. No one will fight harder for you. No one will do more to keep you competitive than the state and the people of South Carolina. Second, for the federal government, the lesson must be that if you pick a fight with South Carolina, you better be prepared for one, because South Carolinians take care of our own. We always have, we always will, and we will not tolerate indefensible acts against our citizens. And third, the lesson that I, and I hope you, take away from this episode is that together, speaking with one voice and driving toward a clear and focused goal, there is nothing that South Carolina cannot accomplish. The sheer size of investment and the raw number of jobs we have seen come our way this year, during a time when states and nations are struggling economically in ways that the world has rarely seen, is a testament to the truth of that idea. Coming into office a year ago, Secretary Bobby Hitt and I found an economic development community in South Carolina that was fractured. But job recruitment is, by its very nature, a team sport. You don't just sell a state, you sell a state, a county, a community, and a way of life. They say all politics is local. That is twice as true for economic development. And the team effort has worked. We have so much to be excited about. And not just in the traditional economic hotbeds like Charleston and Greenville and Lexington, who we want to continue to thrive and grow, but also in the less populated areas like Orangeburg and Union and Denmark. please help me celebrate some of the great announcements we have had over the year. Every South Carolinian should be proud of the fact that of all the places in the world these companies could have picked, they elected to make our home their home. When I call your name, please stand and be recognized. Representing Continental Tire in Sumter, George Dirch. You may want to hold your applause until they're all standing. We got a list. Representing TD Bank in Greenville and Lexington, David Lominack. Representing Bridgestone Americas in Graniteville, Steve Brooks. Representing Nephron Pharmaceuticals in West Columbia, Lou and Bill Kennedy. Representing BMW Manufacturing in Greer, who just produced their 2 millionth car and announced the new BMW X4, Max Metcalf. Representing Otis Elevator in Florence, Torcia Hicks. Representing ZF Group in Duncan, Dr. Ludger Reckman. Representing Innovative Composites International in Orangeburg, Rubens Roque. Representing B Green Packaging in Ridgeland, Mark Blitzer and Dave Brown. Representing GKN Aerospace and Airshow Catch, by the way, in Orangeburg, Kevin Cummings. Representing Takitco in North Charleston, Jeff Winkler. Representing Gestamp, South Carolina in Union, John Craig. Please stand and give all of these friends a great South Carolina round of applause. We have another great reason to celebrate in South Carolina. From the tidal creeks of Beaufort to the shores of Lake Keowee, South Carolina is blessed with the kind of natural beauty that makes us the envy of the nation. And this was the first year we finally beat San Francisco. Charleston was named the #1 top tourist destination in America. Please join me in congratulating Mayor Joe Riley, who unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, and the people of Charleston. But we can't rely on God's gifts alone to keep our tourism industry, the second largest industry in our state, turning. We have to sell South Carolina, and there is no better opportunity, no better showcase for our state and our citizens than the Heritage Golf Tournament. For a generation, the Heritage had been backed by a longtime corporate sponsor. It was a shock to our system that we lost their support. But that shock did not justify the knee-jerk response from some in our government. It is not now, nor will it ever be, the responsibility of the taxpayers of South Carolina to fund a golf tournament. Instead, it is the responsibility of the leaders of our state to do the work necessary, sometimes hard, sometimes less than glamorous, to preserve the events that we value, that pump dollars into our economy and energy into our communities. And the hard work of many, Duane Parrish in particular, and a host of local stakeholders on Hilton Head Island paid off. The nation will again watch the best in the world walk down the 18th fairway at Harbortown, awed by the beauty of the setting, the state, and the graciousness of our people. South Carolina has a new partner, a great friend, so please help me thank and welcome the title sponsor of the Heritage Golf Tournament, RBC, represented tonight by James Tricoli. We'd also be remiss if we didn't thank once again Boeing, the local presenting sponsor of the new RBC Heritage. Thank you. While we have made great progress, there is more work to do. We will continue to sell our great state each and every day, to fight for the jobs our people need and for the financial security they deserve. In order to better do that, we in this room need to focus on legislation that is pro-business and helps us create a more competitive environment. I have long said that it is a wonderful thing when we recruit new companies to South Carolina, But when one of our own expands, that's when the real celebration begins. We have to take care of the businesses we already have. And when they can grow and invest back in their people, their product, and their state, we're doing something right. As we talk with CEOs from around the world, their focus is clear. Keep the cost of doing business low. Our agencies have taken strides to reduce regulations and fees and to change the culture so that every single employee understands that if government is costing our businesses time, we are costing them money, and that is unacceptable. Speaking of lost time and money, I want to thank Speaker Bobby Harrell and Senator Larry Martin for leading the charge on tort reform last year. Until 2011, South Carolina was the only state in the Southeast that did not cap damages on lawsuits. Thanks to the people in this room, that is no longer the case. That was a huge first. My ask of you today is to remember there is always more to be done on tort reform. Looking at the states we compete with, the Tennessees, the Alabamas, the Virginias, it would be naive to think that they will settle for playing second fiddle to South Carolina in the economic arms race. They will scrap for jobs every bit as hard as we will. And the greater the protection we give our people and businesses from frivolous lawsuits, the better positioned we will be to capitalize on other assets. The next step in tort reform is a loser pay system, so that there is a real cost to suits that waste the time and money of our businesses and that of our courts, and that our companies understand that South Carolina won't stand for trial lawyers playing games with their bottom line. We also need to strengthen our workforce. It's critical on two levels. First, the ability of our state to provide a company with the workers it needs to quickly move products is a huge component to getting them here in the first place. If they can't find workers here, they'll go somewhere else. Second, and just as important, we want these jobs going to our people. 20,000 new jobs coming to our state is a lot more exciting when it means that 20,000 more South Carolina workers will be walking out the door each morning with their heads held high, with a sense of purpose and pride, able to care for themselves and for their families. The tools for an effective job training program already exist. We just need to do a better job of putting together the puzzle. Our technical colleges and vocational rehab programs are as good as any in the country. Ready SC has proven time and time again it can deliver the workers our companies need and deliver them swiftly. It is our responsibility to ensure that the left hand is talking to the right, that we aren't wasteful, and that every dollar directed to workforce training is actually spent on training our workforce. Before the month is over, you will see us unveil a restructuring of our workforce training program. Under the direction of General Abe Turner and in partnership with one of the most respected and effective private sector companies in America, we will get our communities ready and put South Carolina back to work. Finally, I love that we are one of the least unionized states in the country. It is an economic development tool like no other. Our companies in South Carolina understand that they are only as good as those who work for them, and they take care of their employees. The people of South Carolina have a strong work ethic. They value loyalty, and they take tremendous pride in the quality of their work. We don't have unions in South Carolina because we don't need unions in South Carolina. However, as we saw with the assault from the NLRB, the unions don't understand that. They will do everything they can to invade our state and drive a wedge between our workers and our employers. We can't have that. Unions thrive in the dark. Secrecy is their greatest ally. Sunlight, their most potent adversary. We can and we will do more to protect South Carolina businesses by shining that light on every action the unions take. With the help and support of Chairman Bill Sandifer and Director Catherine Templeton, we will create a competitive playing field for the companies that choose to call our state home. We will require unions to tell the people of South Carolina how much money they are making on our backs, which politicians they are funding, and how much they're paying themselves. We will protect the right of every private and public citizen to refuse to join a union. And by executive order, I will make it clear that our state will not subsidize striking workers by paying them unemployment benefits. And we'll make the unions understand full well that they are not needed, not wanted, and not welcome in the state of South Carolina. All of the strong pro-business policies we put into place won't matter, however, if we do not keep our fiscal house in order. During the past several years, agencies have faced financial challenges and used fund balances and flexibility to shift money between accounts to cover expenses like rent and payroll. With revenues increasing, state government needs to stop these non-transparent accounting practices. It is time for truth in budgeting. In my executive budget, we have funded agency operations with recurring funds so that taxpayers can see how much and where money is spent. No more agency shell games. No more one-time money for multi-year expenses. Much of the so-called growth in this budget is not growth at all, but simply us being honest about how much it costs to operate state government. To permanently control spending, our government can and must function within a spending cap. And as you've heard me say time and time again, any general fund dollars above and beyond that cap must go towards tax relief, debt relief, or reserve funds. We cannot continue to spend every dollar we have. It is bad policy in our homes and in our businesses, which I think we can all agree to. Then we know it's bad policy in state government. It has to end. Milton Friedman, the famed economist, once said, "One of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results." We agree. In order to stay within the spending cap and deal with massive expansions in federally mandated programs like Medicaid, we have had to make unpopular decisions. But we've also tried to restore some of the programs and agencies that do pass the test, that do fulfill core functions of government. The protection of our citizens and communities allows for us to have the quality of life we enjoy in our state, which is why last week our budget strengthened the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. We have restored funding to our DNA lab so that SLED can clear the backlogs. We have increased the number of SLED agents, equipments, and their technology budget. And we've brought Chief Mark Keel home where he belongs, so that SLED can return quickly to its intended mission, serving the sheriffs and chiefs across South Carolina. We've also bolstered mental health, recognizing the failing to provide basic care to those who suffer from mental illness will cost us more money in the long run, both in dollars and human costs. These are people who, if treated, can live safe and productive lives. If left untreated, they often end up in one of two places, our emergency rooms or our jails. Finally, every child in South Carolina learns differently, some more so than others. It is our responsibility as the leadership of this state to embrace that reality, not fight it, and give all of our children the chance to learn, to grow, and to thrive. And so the time to make real investment in our charter schools has come. And our budget does just that. Charters are innovators. We need those fresh insights and ideas to help us improve our educational system for all of South Carolina's children. Yes, we can, have, and will cut spending in the state of South Carolina, but we must be smart about it. The time of across-the-board cuts is over. The executive budget also outlines a number of policy initiatives that will continue to move South Carolina forward and make us more competitive, and importantly, it pays for them. Tax reform is critical to our state. Every conversation we have with CEOs at some point drifts to our tax structure. and we have been communicating with Representative Tommy Stringer and his Tax Reform Committee on how we move forward with real changes this year. Our budget includes almost $140 million in tax cuts for the people and businesses of South Carolina. These cuts will flatten the individual income tax from 6 brackets to 3, reduce taxes for the citizens of our state by almost $80 million, and phase out the corporate income tax over a 4-year period, injecting much-needed dollars back into our businesses and giving us an unbelievable economic development tool. The tax relief we ultimately adopt must be broad-based, offering relief to as many South Carolinians as possible. And these tax cuts should mean lower rates, not more credits, exemptions, and loopholes that only benefit a chosen few. What we have laid out in the budget is a blueprint for how we believe the dollars available for tax reductions can best be spent. Together, I believe we can agree to a set of tax cuts that make South Carolina more competitive and send more dollars back where they belong, in the pockets of the people and the businesses of our state. The executive budget also presents a plan to give local school districts more control over school buses. There is absolutely no reason for South Carolina to remain the only state in the nation that runs a bus fleet. It is cumbersome, it is wasteful, and it prevents our Department of Education from focusing its efforts where they need to be, on educating the next generation of South Carolinians. Under the new system, individual school districts will be given the opportunity to decide whether to operate bus fleets themselves, choose a private operation, or to develop a hybrid solution. The goal here is to give districts as much flexibility as possible, as every district is made up with different students with different needs. We're not interested in mandating bus choices down on our locals. What we are interested in is giving them options and getting the state of South Carolina out of the school bus maintenance business. I know many in this chamber are concerned about the situation with our ports. The concerns are valid because our ports are vital. Let me start by assuring you that no one will work harder to get the funding necessary to deepen the Port of Charleston, starting with the creation of a port infrastructure fund in this year's budget. Part of South Carolina's advantage in recruiting industry is the Port of Charleston. It is a huge part of why companies like Bridgestone, Continental, and Michelin come to and expand in our state. From the first day of our administration, I have worked with our federal delegation to clear away all of the impediments to making Charleston the premier port in the Southeast, starting with getting the port to the post-Panamax depth of 50 feet. There has been much discussion about DHEC's decision and whether 2 viable ports in the region are good or bad for the economies of South Carolina businesses and our state. I have said it before. I will say it again. I am not afraid of a 48-foot Georgia port 36 miles up the Savannah River confined to one-way traffic. You should not be either. Let's quit bickering and work together to see Charleston return to its greatness, Jasper to have a future, and Georgetown to have a purpose. Finally, the executive budget calls for an evolution of the way we fund higher education. Our intention is twofold. Reward the schools that well serve our students while providing real motivation for those that need to improve. I was a legislator. I remember the pressure that comes with the budget. I also know that there needs to be a better, more consistent way to fund higher education, and one based on merit and accountability, not on which school is the most popular. By adopting a new accountability-based funding formula for higher education, we all win. The schools get stability and flexibility. Legislators will no longer be faced with university lobbyists demanding dollar after dollar. And above all, South Carolina's parents and students will know that their education is fairly and appropriately funded. When this administration took office, we were facing massive deficits in 3 agencies: Corrections, Social Services, and Health and Human Services. I told you then that deficits were unacceptable in the Haley administration. And tonight, I am proud to say that not one cabinet agency is running a deficit of even a single dollar. I'd like to request that the best cabinet a governor could ever ask for please stand and be recognized. The largest of those deficits was HHS, facing a hole of $228 million. In response, I asked you to release the handcuffs off of the department so they could truly manage our Medicaid program. Under the leadership of Senator Harvey Peeler, you did, and for that, I thank you. Since then, HHS has moved aggressively to find problems and fix them. Today, the program is on budget and has avoided the massive service and reimbursement cuts that other states continue to experience. And this past week, we announced enhanced fraud prevention and quality control to reduce eligibility and payment errors found in audits of the agency's work under previous administrations. A year ago, many of us argued that our #1 health care problem in this country was its high cost, and that the way to provide better health to our citizens was not just massively expanding a broken system by giving it more government money. Medicaid is that broken system. There is too much waste, too much fraud, and too little focus on prevention and personal responsibility. And almost all of those problems are caused by mandates of the federal government. But here in South Carolina, under the leadership of Director Tony Keck, we are tackling the root causes of those problems and not just the symptoms. Healthcare providers are now working in partnership with us to improve quality and lower costs. We identified payment reform to align incentives between healthcare providers, payers, and patients as a top priority and implementing strategies to do just that. We are shifting towards Medicaid managed care, which independent studies show saves us more and delivers better quality than traditional Medicaid. And for the first time, we are giving managed care companies a financial stake in improving quality year after year. No longer will the state of South Carolina bear the costs of poorly managed health care alone. We will continue to push back against the federal takeover of our health care system. South Carolina does not want and cannot afford the President's health care plan. Not now, not ever. To that end, we will not pursue the type of government-run health exchanges being forced on us by Washington. Despite the rose-colored rhetoric coming out of D.C., these exchanges are nothing more than a way to make the state do the federal government's bidding in spending massive amounts of taxpayer dollars on insurance subsidies that we can't afford. We will have no part of that. Instead, we will continue to fight to increase transparency between patients and doctors and insurance companies, and to get South Carolinians invested again in their health care. As a nation, we can no longer allow ourselves to be divorced from the true cost of health care, and in South Carolina, we won't be. Last year, we spoke openly and honestly about the fact that it was a tough budget year, and for some groups and some programs, it was going to hurt. In some respects, the same thing is true this year. I have been pleased to see what's been accomplished on pension reform in the past few months. Specifically, I want to recognize Senator Greg Ryberg, who has literally been banging the drum on this problem for years, as well as Senators Hugh Leatherman and Thomas Alexander, Representatives Brian White and Jim Merrill, and Retirement Director Bill Bloom. The seriousness and focus with which you have approached reforming our retirement system is commendable. Let's be clear. The size of our pension system, the size of the unfunded liability, has ballooned from $199 million in 1999 to $17 billion this year. If we are to honor our commitments to those who have already dedicated their careers to public service, then no one can dispute that this is an issue we must resolve to deal with today. Fortunately, some steps have already been taken. The recent decision to lower the assumed rate of return was an important one, not just because it means we will finally be more honest about how much we can expect our retirement systems to earn, but also because it forced us to confront the fact that our current policy of automatically awarding cost of living increases is irresponsible and unsustainable. To protect our pension funds, we must stop granting cost of living increases to our retirees in years when the funds are losing money. It may not be politically popular, but it's the only responsible thing to do. There are a number of other reforms that we must adopt in order to shore up our retirement systems and to curtail further abuses. We need anti-spiking provisions that keep employees from using sick leave and vacation to artificially inflate their pension payouts. For new enrollees, we need to close the doors to the Terry program once and for all to prevent double dipping. And while we're on the subject of double dipping, we need to shut down the General Assembly's own retirement system. It's time that legislators receive the same benefits as other state employees. If we take these steps now, we can ensure that our state employees have a reasonable, sustainable, comfortable retirement. If we don't, if we continue to stick our heads in the sand, they may not have a retirement at all. The retirement system is not the only reform we need to move forward with. Just this summer, we were reminded what happens when you have an agency that answers to more than one boss. At the Department of Transportation, we have a secretary appointed by the governor who runs day-to-day operations and a commission that sets policy and approves projects as a balancing act, one that has the entire department answering to two bosses. Worse, the commission system is entirely political and pits the regions of our state against each other. How can we possibly have a statewide road plan when every project is initiated because of parochial needs and interests? The honest answer is we cannot. DOT cannot repeat the mistakes of this past summer, and they will fix the structural issues causing the problems. But it is time for the two bosses system to go. I ask that you support Speaker Pro Tem Jay Lucas, who has more than 60 co-sponsors joining him in this effort to restructure the Department of Transportation. Many in this room worked on this issue in 2007. We knew then that the actions we took were simply the first step. It is time we finish the job and dissolve the Transportation Commission. Speaking of restructuring, 2 decades ago, Governor Carroll Campbell made the following comment in his State of the State address. Quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, 1992 is the time to start whipping government into shape. We must reform government, and we must start now. For at least 62 years, governors had stood at this podium appealing to the General Assembly for an efficient government accountable to the people. 8 studies spanning 70 years echoed this call, yet much of government answers to no one." End quote. 20 years later, we are closer than we've ever been to ridding the people of South Carolina of a backwards 19th century government structure that continues to keep us down. Constitutional amendments to allow for the appointment of the Superintendent of Education and for the Governor and Lieutenant Governor to run on the same ticket are through the House, through committee, and on the Senate calendar. Let's bring them home. And then there's the Department of Administration. Chairman Jim Harrison got the bill rolling in the House, and our offices worked on the development of the Davis-Massey Amendment in the Senate. We ask that you support it. It is finally time to abolish the Budget and Control Board. The bill is now on the Senate floor. Many in the Senate committed to the people of our state last June that the Department of Administration will be the first task you complete this year. I thank you for that, and I know the people will hold you to your commitment. I understand all too well the politics that stand in the way of this bill landing on my desk, but the leadership of South Carolina has for far too long put politics ahead of progress, and our constituents deserve better. They deserve a government that hears them when they speak, that responds to their needs, that wastes less and serves better. And they deserve a government that is truly, finally accountable to them. Please don't get distracted. This is not about politics. This is not about power. This is simply about moving our state forward and responding to the will of the people. It's time to put this issue behind us, celebrate together, and move on. The first year of anything new brings challenges and opportunities, pleasant surprises, and regrettable disappointments. This last year for me has been no different. I have been pleasantly surprised by the willingness of legislators to work together and find common ground for the betterment of the people of South Carolina. It is my sincere hope that the willingness remains and that we can continue to make progress on the issues we've touched on tonight. My biggest disappointment has been just as surprising, although less pleasantly so. I simply do not understand the culture of negativity that exists within our political class. The initial response to almost every action is for someone to say can't and no, and then run to file a lawsuit. I think differently. I believe the only way we make South Carolina better, stronger, is to take that same negative energy and turn it into a positive, and focus on can and will instead of can't and won't. No greater example of this negativity exists than the response of a few naysayers to the phone greeting we created for our state employees. Let me tell you how that story came about. While my primary focus day to day is on getting our state working again, I also understand that I am the Chief Executive of South Carolina, and I've tried to do what I can to improve the morale of state employees and remind them that our mission is customer service. One afternoon, I was in my office thinking about the culture of negativity that we were trying so hard to change. So I made my way to Sheila Jones, our receptionist, and I asked her to try answering the phone. It's a great day in South Carolina. How may I help you? And to let me know what the response is. On the first try, the caller responded, "You know, it is a great day in South Carolina." It was all the confirmation I needed. The goal was for state employees to feel proud of where we live and what we do, and have a constant reminder that we work for the person on the other side of the line. What could possibly be so wrong with that? So let's think about this. In 2011, we started with a deficit and ended with a surplus. We announced almost 20,000 jobs and $5 billion in new investments. Our legislature showed the people they understood the importance of putting their votes on the record and passed tort, unemployment, and Medicaid reforms. We protected the integrity of our election process from voter fraud and from the citizens from the dangers of illegal immigration. We saved the Heritage Golf Tournament, and we won the fight with the National Labor Relations Board. Those are all reasons to celebrate. But what I love is that we are a great state with good, hardworking people. We are patriotic and love our country. We appreciate the simple blessings of life. We understand that the hospitality we show visitors is reflective of all of us. Through our challenges, we will never forget the importance of holding on to our faith and families and always taking care of our neighbors. That, to me, is more than enough reason to say it is a great day in South Carolina, and we've only just begun. Thank you, God bless you, and may He continue to smile on the state of South Carolina.
Good evening. I'm Representative Bakari Sellers of South Carolina's 90th District, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. On behalf of the Democratic Party, I will respond to Governor Haley by offering a clear vision for the future of South Carolina, a future of opportunity and prosperity for all South Carolinians, a future where we encourage innovation, reward achievement, and live up to our responsibility with long overdue investments in our public health, infrastructure, education, and safety. These are the founding principles at the heart of our Democratic Party and the values that have sustained our state for generations. It is a commitment to the proud, hardworking families of South Carolina that give Democrats an unshakable faith, not simply in who we were or who we are, but who we can be. Over the past year, Democrats have proposed a series of new policy initiatives that would have encouraged new growth and provided new opportunities for South Carolina's families. Our colleagues across the aisle have rebuked our attempts at partnership, And rather than endorsing policies that would have propelled our state through the 21st century, they responded with worn-out slogans and dogmas of the past, creating a race to the bottom in classroom achievement and job growth. We face real challenges in providing quality education for our children, creating new jobs, high-paying jobs for our communities, and securing a safe 21st century infrastructure for all our citizens. So tonight, I will ask for your help in pressing our state leadership to rise to that challenge and focus their energies not on driving wedge issues based on superficial distinctions for the next election, but on building solutions for a new generation. In South Carolina, a once proud network of public schools and technical colleges, due to years of disregard and neglect, today rank among our nation's worst. Our K-12 schools are currently ranked 42nd, and our classrooms along the I-95 corridor have been neglected for so long that they form a corridor of shame. Our best and brightest students in these communities are being locked out of their futures by empty talking points and misguided rhetoric. To tackle this challenge, Democrats have proposed making investments in our school systems a top priority. Last year, we worked with our federal partners to bring $144 million in direct funding to our public schools. And rather than join us in leveraging this opportunity into achievement, Governor Haley and Superintendent of Education Zais, they put the desires of the Republican National Committee ahead of the needs of South Carolina's children. And make no mistake, the governor and superintendent's willingness to trade our state's future for short-term political favor will be felt in every classroom in the state. We believe that it's no coincidence that our most underperforming schools are often found in our most unhealthy communities. Study after study has shown that early childhood education makes a difference in educational achievement and health outcomes that last a lifetime. That is why we must establish a universal four-year-old kindergarten program. Democrats have further proposed increasing funding for early childhood education, funding that has either remained flat or declined every year since the late 1990s. Furthermore, a 21st Century Scholars Program must be developed to support students who uphold their end of the bargain by making good grades and staying out of trouble, with the opportunity to go to college right here in South Carolina. In an opportunity society, if you have the skills and are willing to work, you should be able to go to college, even if your family cannot afford it. We also recognize that every single child in this state deserves an effective teacher. Therefore, we must have a plan that would create new incentives for recruiting first-class teachers into our classrooms, evaluate teacher performance, and pay our teachers competitive salaries. Democrats have consistently sought the governor's leadership on these issues, but have been disappointed to find that Governor Haley is either unwilling or unable to join us in the fight for our children's future. The second area where South Carolinians demand a renewed focus is job creation. We understand that any effort to create new, quality jobs that pay livable wages must begin with fostering private sector partnerships and creating new incentives for businesses that build and expand right here in South Carolina. And despite the fact that South Carolina's unemployment rate of 9.9% continues to outpace the national average, that many of our main streets remain largely empty, and that our small businesses are struggling just to survive, we have found our Republican colleagues resistant to any policy that would promote a new jobs agenda for the 21st century. Now, in response to this assertion, Republicans are likely to mention the Fortune 500 company Amazon. However, the fact remains that last year our Republican colleagues buckled to overwhelming pressure to build this new round-the-clock distribution center near Casey, South Carolina. And rather than take the lead on this deal that will create over 1,200 full-time jobs and 2,500 part-time jobs, the governor opposed bringing Amazon and the jobs it would create to South Carolina. This is yet another example of a failure to lead on a greater effort to prime our economy for sustained, long-term growth with broadly shared gains for the middle class. Democrats have found our colleagues largely absent. When we proposed making forward-looking measures to boost our economy, we were met with the worn slogans of tax cuts for the wealthy. When we proposed building the infrastructure that businesses needed to move their goods to market, Governor Haley and many of our Republican colleagues have stood in the way of making our state stronger and more secure. All across our state, South Carolina's roads and bridges are crumbling. And rather than follow the examples of Charleston Mayor Joe Riley and Columbia Mayor Steve Benjamin, who have brought millions of dollars in critical infrastructure investment to South Carolina, or Florence Mayor Stephen Wakila, meeting the people's need for new highway, water, and sewer infrastructure, the Republican Party line has consistently criticized efforts to invest in our state through an infrastructure bank. Investment in infrastructure is not frivolous government spending. It is, however, an important foundation to the economic engine of our state. And finally, when the people of South Carolina needed our governor to stand with us in the fight to boost the Port of Charleston's competitiveness, a position that was once unrivaled down the East Coast, the governor let us down. apparently content to allow the Port of Savannah to continue cutting into our market and expanding at Charleston's expense. The Port of Charleston is of great economic importance to the state, and the governor's failure to lead on this issue has had huge negative consequences to our largest employers. Leadership means that regardless of political party, the interest of our great state must be paramount. My fellow South Carolinians, our families are facing a new age of unprecedented challenges, and the obstacles before us seem tough to comprehend, much less conquer. Perhaps it is because the road ahead is so daunting that the Democratic Party is now more than ever committed to the spirit embodied in our state motto, Dum Spiro, Spero. While I breathe, I hope. It is a hope for the young man graduating college this year who doesn't know where or when he'll find a job. It is a hope for the teacher reaching into her own pocket to buy supplies for her students. It's hope for neighborhoods struggling with flooding roads and bridges long past their prime. It's hope for every parent who wants more for their children than minimally adequate classrooms and a minimum wage job. It's hope for every citizen who thinks that it's time for leaders who say what they mean and mean what they say. It's hope for people ready to move beyond a politics of white and black, red and blue, and into a government of, by, and for the people. Our time is now, and we must recommit ourselves to shaping the destiny South Carolina deserves in these difficult yet hopeful times. And faced with the daunting challenges ahead, I am confident standing together with one breath and one hope, South Carolina will again prevail. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the great state of South Carolina.